It's the beginning of December. We're in Norway. We're up inside the Arctic Circle in Tromso. We're here for 5 days of snow play and adventure. Come along and join us. We're Andrew and Leonie, and we like to cruise.
Join us on our travels all over the world as we review a range of cruises, cruise lines, all types of shore excursions, and occasionally an exceptional non-cruise adventure.
And remember to like and subscribe. So, this is the third and final episode of our three-part series on cruising Norway in winter. After stepping off our 12-day voyage on Havila Pollux, we flew 2,000 kilometres from Bergen in the south of Norway to Tromso, the capital of the Arctic and the most northerly city in the world.
Now, Andrew, can you explain why we went to Tromso in winter, in the middle of the polar night, when it was so cold and when we thought and hoped, maybe, that we were going to get a lot of snow?
Yeah, I can answer that.
I sort of answered it, didn't I?
Because it was winter, it has the polar night, it gets very cold, and it gets a lot of snow.
Yep.
We also thought that it would give us a really great opportunity to see the Northern Lights. I really wanted to experience the Arctic winter, if only for a few days, and because Tromso has some of the most amazing adventure activities, quite mind-blowing and seriously fun.
Yep.
You got to try something that you were really keen on, childhood experience.
Yep, and that was feeding and patting reindeers. So the Havila cruise took us from Bergen to Kirkenes back to Bergen, and as part of the cruise we stopped in Tromso for a few hours and we chose to do the excursion that Havila offered, which was to a reindeer farm. There wasn't any snow yet, so we didn't get the reindeer sleigh part of the excursion, although they gave us a partial credit for that, so that was very fair. We were still able to feed the reindeer and to pat them. It was like all childhood fantasies, or mine anyway, and it was coming up to Christmas. It was the end of November, so it was just a beautiful, magical time. The reindeer excursion was led by a Sami guide whose name was Luna. The Sami are the indigenous people of the north, which is an unofficial territory spanning Norway, Sweden, Finland and Russia. The Sami reindeer herding family in Tromso has nurtured reindeer for generations. There's about 300 reindeer. They run wild in the summer, and in the winter the Sami care for them and the tourists feed them.
Fun fact, the Disney movie franchise Frozen took much inspiration from the Sami people and their culture, and indeed from the whole Norwegian Arctic region.
And I must confess, I didn't know that until we went there, so that was cool.
Luna actually told us about her people's culture and sang us songs which are called yoiks in the Sami language. We sat around a roaring campfire in a traditional Sami tent called a gami, whilst we drank hot chocolate and sampled reindeer stew. It was a phenomenal setting, really warm, really enjoyable, and very, very unique.
It was. So that reindeer excursion was while we were on the cruise. Finished the cruise now and we went back to Tromso and we arrived to icy, slippery footpaths with snow on the ground, but it wasn't falling. A few hours after we arrived it started snowing, and for the next 5 days it did not stop. It was brilliant. The overcast skies made the daylight hours darker, but the brilliant white snow brightened the whole town. Plus, every shop, shopping street and house seemed to be decorated with lights.
Yeah, it was very pretty.
Very pretty. There were plenty of beautiful Christmas lights, but more than that, there were golden fairy lights twinkling wherever you looked. I joked that it must be a license to print money to manufacture or sell fairy lights in Norway, because they're absolutely everywhere. And I love fairy lights, so I was good with that. We didn't grow tired of the snow. Obviously we're from Melbourne in Australia, we don't get it. So real novelty for us, and the texture of it was just incredible. It was powdery, soft, thick and glorious. So it was fairyland, it was winter wonderland, it was a Christmas movie set, it was a Hallmark card, all those cliches, it was all of them. Loved Tromso.
Well, from that setup, I think you did fall in love with Tromso pretty much at first sight.
Yeah.
Amidst all this snow, the town functions. With a population of about 70,000, Tromso locals don spikes on their boots, change their car tyres to winter tyres, set their alarms earlier in case they have to dig their car out of the snow, and just carry on with their lives. The roads are regularly cleared of snow. On the days we were in Tromso, we saw the piles of cleared snow grow bigger and bigger, and the piles of snow on the moored boats, there were a lot of moored boats, grew higher and higher. It was really something to see.
It was. That was sort of incongruous, these boats that are just stationary with just piles and piles and piles and piles of snow. Tromso is a town set up for tourists, and winter is peak season. No wonder. The snow is a tourist attraction on its own, especially for those of us unused to seeing it. And there's also really unique experiences on offer. Reindeer experiences, we talked about ours, whale watching, husky sledding and snowmobiling. They're all activities that we did, but there's other experiences too. We just ran out of time. And they're not cheap. So you need to pick the ones you most want to do, and that's what we did.
My first order of business was a fishing charter. I'd booked it months in advance to catch the legendary Arctic cod that arrive in masses apparently in the waters off Tromso in winter. Sadly for me, the weather gods were not smiling at me. The wind was blowing a gale and the fishing charter was cancelled. I think all tourist and charter boats were confined to port that day and for the previous day. As we had an activity booked every day, I basically had no spare time in Tromso and I never got to catch that Arctic cod.
No.
I guess we're just going to have to come back for another visit in winter.
We'll have to. And fun fact, I had a walking tour booked that day, which was going to be my thing, and that was cancelled. I've never ever had a walking tour cancelled for weather. So the weather was meant to be pretty bad. We didn't find it to be that bad though, so perhaps it wasn't as bad as they thought. Anyway, when the weather gods give you lemons, make lemonade. So we did. That first full day we walked the town of Tromso, which is not very big. We visited a museum, an aquarium, and just wandered around.
Took it in.
Did a bit of snow play and took some photos and loved it.
The first and best of these museums was the Polar Museum. It's housed in an old boathouse, and the Polar Museum's exhibitions tell the story of Tromso as the historical gateway to the Arctic. This includes the story of Norwegian trapping and hunting on Svalbard and Greenland. It is a bit of a gruesome story and sad in today's environmental times. But what I really liked in this museum was the Arctic expeditions of Norwegian explorers Fridtjof Nansen, I think I butchered that, but go with it, and Roald Amundsen, which I personally couldn't get enough of. I love all things Amundsen, and if you ever get to go to Oslo, go to the Fram Museum, which is dedicated to Amundsen as well. Yeah,
that was just on that. We went to Antarctica 18 months ago or so, so even I'm fascinated by Amundsen, and that Fram Museum was fantastic. I loved that part of the Polar Museum. I wasn't so keen on the hunting part. It was a bit too gruesome for me, but there was a lot of really interesting information there. So
well worth going to.
Definitely well worth going to. Next up was Polaria, the world's northernmost aquarium. They have a large theatre showing some interesting education videos on the Arctic, the Northern Lights and Arctic wildlife. There were 3 separate videos that were available that day anyway.
Massive screen.
Yeah, massive screen in English. They're in several languages actually, but they were really interesting. They also had some seals and put on a live show. Luckily, sometime this year, 2025, they're extending that seal section.
Significantly.
Yeah, well I hope it's significantly because it was very squashy. Perhaps because of the weather and because other things were cancelled and there was some ships docked, stuck basically. So it was very tight, but that was a cool couple of hours, however long we spent there as well.
Yeah, the new Polaria looks like it's going to be amazing. State-of-the-art piece of architecture in its own right, worth visiting. So
worth visiting no
check
matter what time of the year you're there. The next day, we went whale watching.
We did. We went whale watching in the dark, but we did see orcas and humpback whales off Skjervøy. And in the interest of complete honesty, this was probably the one activity in Tromso that we did not totally love.
No.
It was a 3.5 hour trip each way to get to the whale watching grounds. So 7 hours of travelling for around 40 minutes of actual whale watching.
And quite rough.
The water was rough and the whales were at least 100 metres from the boat. I'd also just chip in that there was quite a bit of seasickness among other passengers on the boat. So
nothing better than someone running past you and vomiting loudly in the toilet so that you can hear it.
Yeah. Look, I think the trip had been cancelled for the previous 2 days, and the operators were super keen to get as many people as they could out to see the whales. The problem was, I think that the weather was kind of marginal, whether we went or not, and given how rough and how foggy and misty it was, it probably wasn't our favourite.
It was also very dark. That's not their fault, but it's not that exciting being on a boat for that long.
We've got some great.
Anyway, pretty unusual being on a pleasure craft where it's snowing and the decks and seats and everything are covered in snow, but
everyone inside to sleep, but it feels it's a bit weird to video, so I was getting a bit bored. There is Wi-Fi on the boat, but probably should have brought a book if I'd realised. They said it could take 3 hours to get to where the whales are, so I didn't realise that. Should have done my research.
What are you hoping to see?
I'm not fussed what we see. Any whale's a good whale.
Okay, well, I've got a wish list in for orcas, killer whales, so we'll see how we go.
Yeah, no, look, I hope we see something. He said they've got a 90% success rate, so hopefully we won't be in the 10%.
The whale watching was with Brim Explorer. The company started in 2019 and has 3 boats in Tromso. All their boats are custom designed for whale watching, fully electric or hybrid, and are silent or close to it, particularly when they get to where the whales are, which lowers the impact on the whales.
Yeah, the boats were beautiful, and it snowed pretty well the whole day we were on it. It was actually really, really cold outside on deck, but it was also beautiful with the snow on the deck. We've got some good footage of that.
The next day was snowmobiling, and that is something that we both really enjoyed. It was fantastic. It was an adrenaline pumping experience. I'd have to say that it was one of the highlights of our 3 weeks in Norway for me. We were picked up near our hotel and bussed about an hour and a half to an area where the Norwegian, Swedish and Finnish borders all converge and meet. And if you just play that phrase back, what a phenomenal place to be.
Yeah.
Today, very excited. We're about to go snowmobiling. Never done it before. It's about -15. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's almost pitch black. And we're about to go out on this little beauty on a 2.5 hour trek on some groomed trails. Sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, it's moving around a bit. Visibility is pretty good with the front light on. The machine itself is covered in snow. It's still snowing.
Believe it or not, there's 2 controls on the handlebars to heat the handlebars and heat the accelerator toggle thing.
Yeah, so I've got them switched on.
I bet you do.
Yeah. It's actually quite warm. No, this is incredibly fun. Enjoying it a lot.
I'm not entirely sure whether I liked doing it in the pitch dark, so I guess one way to find out, and that's to do it again in the daylight. But we did it in the pitch dark, and that did make it a little bit scary, which is why I'm 50-50 whether.
So it was kind of weird. It was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it was so pitch black you would have sworn it was midnight.
Yep. Absolutely. So I felt a bit like James Bond or some spy or something that was coming in on a snowmobile.
Well, you'd never been on a snowmobile.
I'd never been on a snowmobile.
What'd you think?
It was really smooth. Yeah, no, it was But probably, yeah, it was really smooth, but I didn't know where I was going, so that made it a bit scary. But it also made it exciting. So the lights of the snowmobile lit up the path. We zoomed along a groomed forest trail. We had a guide at the front. We went 24 kilometres deep into the wilderness, but as I say, we couldn't really see, except what was right in front of us and right beside us. Tall trees lathered in snow. They were just gorgeous, and as I already said, coming up to Christmas, so it was like this, just lined with Christmas trees. It was exhilarating. The darkness added another dimension. Not sure, but it was fun. I don't know how you pronounce it, something like Lingsford Adventure was the company we went with. And after the drive finished, we went into a Sami hut, and drank warm black currant juice, which for anyone who knows tasted like Ribena, which was sort of nice, accompanied by traditional Norwegian fish soup, which I quite liked, but you didn't.
No.
And bread. So yeah, it was a really fun activity.
Oh, we'd never been snowmobiling.
It's
so
a bit scary, not because it was unsafe. I don't think it was unsafe at all, but I felt a bit scared.
I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Our final day in Tromsø was definitely the highlight of our whole Norwegian experience. It was driving our own Husky sled. This was a morning tour, and really this is our hot tip. If you want to get even a brief amount of daylight or light, book a morning rather than an afternoon experience.
I was really glad that we did this in the morning. Now, I've already raved on about snowmobiling in the pitch dark. I'm really glad that we could see the dogs and we could see where we were going, and I loved it.
Sorry?
What do you think?
Very loud, very noisy, quite smelly. I'm not sure if the dogs are angry or excited. I'm going to go with excited.
Now, driving the Husky sled is probably a stretch because the dogs are so well trained that they just do it all for you, and they follow the sledge in front. As a driver, and it's only one driver, you stand on the back and you apply the brake when necessary, and by apply the brake you basically jump on it. So
you needed to put a serious amount of muscle into that into the leg to slam that brake
the
down.
rest of the time you basically stood there and the dogs just took you.
Because I promise you, if you didn't apply the brake, you would have been a kilometre down the snow. Those dogs just want to run.
Yeah. But it was really fun. It was about 0 degrees. For that hour or so that we were doing it, there was no snow falling, which was a real rarity in the time we were in Tromsø. That was lucky for us because the visibility was amazing. As we were coming to end it, the snow was starting and it was getting foggier. So we got just the most beautiful view of, well, first of all, feeling of gliding along thick snow through a valley, snow-covered mountains.
And it was light.
All sides, light. Part of the trail is called Fairy Tale Lane. It was just beautiful. The dogs seemed so happy to be running. It was the beginning of the season, so they hadn't had many runs. And it was just so quiet and serene, whereas the afternoon before we'd been on the snowmobile. So it was beautiful. It was so peaceful. And we had about a half an hour each driving, so we took turns, and absolutely highly recommend.
Let's go.
Go!
Woo! This corners remarkably well.
Our magical experience finished with tea, coffee and cake in a Sami tent with a roaring fire. There's a real trend here with these roaring fires.
And the Sami tents.
Yeah.
Probably a bit sort of touristy, but we liked it.
Yeah, it all added to this feeling that we're in a winter wonderland.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Fairyland.
Look, travel never ceases to surprise. We plan to spend a few days in Tromsø to maximise our chances to view the Northern Lights, but the snowy, overcast conditions, which we loved, had the other impact of thwarting any chance of even getting a peep at the Northern Lights. Yet we had an unforgettable few days, being treated to a magnificent display of snow, doing unique activities and seeing the most picturesque picture postcard scenery in this winter wonderland.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're thinking about the ultimate white Christmas, or pre-white Christmas as we did, a winter wonderland, it's also fairyland, magical, Tromso.
And that brings us to the end of this episode, and indeed the end of our 3-part series dedicated to Norway in winter. Special thanks to Havila for making this trip possible.
Yep.
Suffice to say, we love Norway. I can't believe it has taken us so long to get there. Can't wait to go back. Stay tuned for our next episode, which will be dedicated to the remote tropical paradise that is the Keeling Islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Do you think we could have, I was going to say polar opposites, but could we have more polar opposites than Norway in winter and Keeling Islands?
Probably not.
You could be the judge of that when you watch the next video, but I think probably not.
Thanks for watching, and if you liked the video, remember to like and subscribe. Until next time, see you on the water somewhere.
Bye.